The Geiger counter's metallic clicking had become Jake Holloway's favorite lullaby over the past 3 years. A steady rhythm that meant he was still breathing, and the Geiger counter's metallic clicking had become Jake Holloway's favorite lullaby over the past 3 years. A steady rhythm that meant he was still breathing, and the invisible death lurking in the air hadn't reached lethal levels yet. He adjusted the duct-tape strap holding the ancient device to his chest and squinted through the cracked lenses of his salvage goggles at the horizon. Cedar Falls spread before him like a broken promise, its main street littered with the skeletal remains of automobiles that would never run again, and storefronts whose electronic signs would never flicker back to life. Another ghost town, another dollar, Jake muttered to himself, a habit he'd picked up during his months of solitude. Talking to himself had seemed crazy at first, but now it felt like the most normal thing in his decidedly abnormal world. Well, assuming there are any dollars left that aren't radioactive confetti. The Great Solar Storm of 2157 had been a masterpiece of cosmic timing. Scientists later calculated that if the coronal mass ejection had arrived just 6 hours earlier, half the planet would have been asleep and the death toll would have tripled. As it stood, the electromagnetic pulse had merely fried every piece of electronics more complex than a mechanical watch, and plunged human civilization back into something resembling the 1800s. If the 1800s had come with a side order of nuclear winter and radiation poisoning. Jake's boots crunched through the desiccated remains of what had once been someone's front lawn. The grass had turned the color of old pennies and made sounds like breakfast cereal when he walked on it. His radiation detector maintained its steady clicking, occasionally speeding up when he passed a particularly hot spot. He'd learned to trust the device with his life, mainly because the alternative was trusting his luck, and his luck had a questionable track record at best. The town center held the usual treasures: a few intact solar panels that might still function, some copper wiring that hadn't been stripped by previous scavengers, and the ever-popular collection of electronic devices that were now about as useful as decorative paperweights. Jake had developed an eye for spotting the good stuff, the pre-storm tech that could be jury-rigged back to functionality with enough patience and creative cursing. He was examining a promising-looking communications relay when his Geiger counter suddenly shifted tempo. The steady clicking accelerated into an agitated staccato that made him freeze mid-reach. Jake had learned the hard way that when radiation levels spiked without warning, the smart move was to step backward first and ask questions later. He'd seen too many scavengers get cocky around hot spots and end up glowing like human nightlights. "Okay, what's got you all excited?" he asked the detector, backing away from the relay tower. The clicking didn't diminish. If anything, it seemed to be getting more insistent as he moved toward the eastern edge of town. Following radiation spikes was generally considered a form of elaborate suicide, but Jake had always been curious to a fault. His ex-wife used to say that curiosity would be the death of him, though she'd probably imagined something more traditional like a car accident or heart disease, rather than death by invisible atomic particles. The counter's rhythm quickened as he approached what had once been Cedar Falls' modest industrial district, now a collection of twisted metal and collapsed warehouses that looked like abstract sculptures designed by a depressed robot. The source of the radiation became apparent as Jake crested a small hill overlooking the industrial area. Where the old grain elevator had stood, there was now a perfectly circular crater about 50 meters across, as if someone had taken a cosmic ice cream scoop to the landscape. The Geiger counter was practically vibrating with excitement, its clicks merging into an almost continuous buzz that suggested Jake was approaching the kind of radiation levels that could give a person a suntan from the inside out. But it wasn't the crater itself that made Jake stop and stare. It was what was sitting in the middle of it. The object was sleek and curved, like a teardrop made of liquid silver that had been stretched and polished to mirror perfection. It was roughly the size of a small house, though its organic curves made traditional measurements seem inadequate. The surface seemed to shift and flow in his peripheral vision, though when Jake looked directly at it, the craft appeared perfectly still. Most importantly, unlike every other piece of technology within a 1,000-mile radius, this thing looked completely, impossibly intact. "Well," Jake said to his Geiger counter, "I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the tourist brochures." The device's frantic clicking suggested that whatever the object was, it was radioactive enough to make a nuclear power plant jealous. Jake knew he should turn around, walk away, and pretend he'd never seen anything more interesting than a rusty hubcap. Instead, he found himself sliding down the crater's edge, drawn by the same combination of curiosity and poor judgment that had gotten him into trouble his entire life. As he approached the craft, Jake noticed that his radiation detector's clicking was actually beginning to decrease. The readings were still well above background levels, but they seemed to be stabilizing rather than climbing toward the immediate death range. Either the object's radiation was somehow contained, or Jake was about to discover what the inside of an atom looked like from a very personal perspective. The surface of the craft was warm to the touch and felt oddly organic, like touching the shell of some enormous egg. Jake ran his gloved hand along its curve, marveling at the complete absence of seams, rivets, or any other indication of how the thing had been constructed. It was as if someone had grown it rather than built it. "Definitely not made in Detroit," he observed, then immediately felt silly for talking to what was obviously some kind of aircraft. Though given his recent social life, Jake had always prided himself on being adaptable, but sitting across from an alien woman in what appeared to be the interior of a crystalline snow globe was testing the limits of his flexibility. The inside of Zara's ship defied every assumption he'd made about spacecraft design, resembling less a cockpit and more a living organism. Walls curved seamlessly into ceiling and floor in gentle spirals, and surfaces pulsed with soft bioluminescent patterns that reminded him of deep-sea creatures he'd seen in nature documentaries back when documentaries existed. "Your vessel is experiencing what you might call mechanical difficulties," Jake asked, accepting a cup of something that looked like liquid starlight and tasted like disappointment mixed with vitamins. "Mechanical is not precisely accurate," Zara replied, settling gracefully into what Jake assumed was a chair, though it looked more like a mushroom that had decided to become furniture. "My ship is binaural. Think of it as a very large, very sophisticated brain that also happens to fly between star systems." Jake nearly choked on his drink. "Your ship is alive." "Alive" is a crude approximation, but functionally accurate. The Kepler-class vessels grow rather than being manufactured. This particular entity has been my companion for approximately 47 of your Earth years. Zara gestured affectionately at the nearest wall, which responded with a gentle ripple of golden light. "We have been through much together. And now it's sick. Traumatized might be more precise. When your solar storm occurred, we were transitioning through hyperspace approximately 1 light hour from your sun. The electromagnetic disruption created what your scientists would call a cascade failure in the ship's neural pathways. Imagine suffering a severe concussion while also being struck by lightning, and you begin to understand the trauma my companion experienced." Jake set down his cup carefully. The liquid inside continued to glow faintly, which was either impressive or deeply concerning. "How long have you been stranded here?" "Approximately 4 months, 17 days, and 6 hours by your timekeeping system. I have been surviving on emergency provisions while the ship slowly heals itself and repairs the damaged neural connections. The process cannot be rushed without risk of permanent cognitive damage." "Cognitive damage to your ship?" "Correct. A ship with memory loss or impaired judgment would be quite problematic for interstellar travel." Jake rubbed his temples, feeling the beginning of what promised to be a spectacular headache. "Okay, let me see if I understand this. You're from another planet, Your living spaceship got concussed by our solar storm, and you've been camping in a radioactive crater for 4 months waiting for it to feel better. That is a remarkably accurate summary, though I would characterize my situation as conducting field research rather than camping. Zara's expression brightened with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. I have learned fascinating things about human survival strategies in post-technological collapse scenarios. Your species displays remarkable adaptability in the face of catastrophic infrastructure failure. Thanks, I think. For instance, your method of converting pre-storm automotive batteries into portable power sources using salvaged solar panels and improvised voltage regulators demonstrates impressive resourcefulness. Though I should mention that your electrical connections could be optimized by approximately 37% with proper conductor alignment. Jake blinked. You've been watching me work. I have been monitoring the area for potential threats and useful intelligence. Your activities fell into the latter category. I found your technique of percussive maintenance particularly intriguing. Percussive maintenance. The practice of striking malfunctioning equipment until it resumes proper operation. While crude, it shows surprising effectiveness with certain types of mechanical systems. You mean hitting things until they work? Precisely. It appears to be a fundamental aspect of human engineering philosophy. Jake couldn't decide whether to be insulted or impressed that an interstellar traveler had been taking notes on his repair methods. So you've just been sitting in this crater, watching the local wildlife fumble around with broken electronics. Not exclusively. I have also been studying your broadcast transmission to improve my grasp of human languages and cultural patterns. Your entertainment media provides fascinating insights into human psychology, though I confess some confusion about the popularity of programs featuring individuals voluntarily consuming insects for monetary rewards. Reality TV was pretty weird even before the apocalypse. I have compiled extensive notes on human mating rituals, based on what you call dating shows. The complexity of your courtship displays rivals that of several sentient bird species I have encountered. Jake laughed despite himself. I hate to break it to you, but reality TV isn't exactly representative of normal human behavior. Zara's pointed ears twitched slightly, an expression Jake was beginning to recognize as confusion. You mean humans do not typically engage in competitive food consumption challenges to demonstrate reproductive fitness? Not outside of college fraternities. This explains several inconsistencies in my data. I was particularly puzzled by the apparent human obsession with public humiliation as a form of entertainment. Well, you're not wrong about that part. The ship's walls pulsed with a sequence of blue and green lights, accompanied by a sound like wind chimes made of crystal. Zara tilted her head, listening to what Jake assumed was some form of communication. My companion indicates that the neural pathway reconstruction has reached approximately 63% completion, she translated. At current rates, we should achieve minimum operational capacity within another 26 days. And then you'll leave. Something in Jake's tone made Zara study his face with renewed interest. That would be the logical course of action. My mission parameters require me to minimize contact with developing civilizations to prevent cultural contamination. Cultural contamination. The introduction of advanced technology or concepts that could artificially accelerate a species' natural development. It is considered highly unethical among my people. Jake gestured at the miraculous interior of her ship. Isn't this conversation already contaminating the hell out of my culture? Technically, yes, which presents me with something of a dilemma. Zara's luminescent skin seemed to dim slightly. Contact with your species was not anticipated in my mission planning. What was your mission? Long-range survey and cataloging of potentially habitable worlds in this galactic sector. Earth was marked for observational study only, given your species' current technological limitations. Limitations being the key word there. Your civilization has shown remarkable progress in certain areas, while displaying concerning deficiencies in others. The solar storm that damaged my ship was actually predicted by your own scientists, yet your infrastructure remained completely vulnerable to its effects. Jake shrugged. We're not great at long-term planning as a species. I have observed this tendency. Your entertainment broadcasts suggest that humans frequently ignore obvious warning signs in favor of immediate gratification. You really need to stop using TV as your primary reference for human behavior. What would you suggest as a more accurate source of cultural information? Jake considered this seriously. Honestly, just talking to people, though I realize that's probably not an option for most folks in your line of work. Jake's morning routine had evolved considerably since partnering with an alien to repair her traumatized spaceship. Instead of his usual breakfast of reconstituted protein bars and lukewarm coffee, he now found himself sampling what Zara called optimal nutrition matrices, while she analyzed the molecular structure of his instant coffee with the fascination of a xenobiologist discovering a new form of life. The caffeine alkaloid serves as a central nervous system stimulant, Zara observed, watching Jake prepare his morning brew with scientific intensity. Yet your preparation method introduces numerous impurities and reduces the bioavailability of beneficial compounds by approximately 43%. Yeah, but it tastes like coffee, Jake replied, stirring the dark liquid with a bent spoon. Your nutrition cubes taste like, well, like someone tried to make food using only the periodic table. They are precisely calibrated to provide optimal macro and micronutrient balance, while minimizing digestive strain and metabolic waste production. They taste like cardboard had a baby with a vitamin pill. Zara's pointed ears drooped slightly. Flavor enhancement was considered a frivolous parameter in the design specifications. Your people need to reconsider their priorities. Their morning banter had become as routine as Jake's salvage runs, which had taken on new purpose now that he was gathering materials for interdimensional spacecraft repair. Today's mission involved locating specific rare Earth elements that Zara's ship required for neural pathway reconstruction, a task that required Jake's knowledge of pre-storm industrial sites combined with Zara's ability to scan for molecular signatures. The thorium deposits should be concentrated in the old electronics manufacturing district, Jake explained, studying a hand-drawn map he'd annotated with radiation readings. Assuming the containment systems held up during the storm. Thorium-232 has a half-life of approximately 14 billion years, Zara noted. Containment failure would be readily detectable from orbit. Good to know. I'd hate to accidentally irradiate myself while helping fix your cosmic therapy brain. My companion is not a therapy brain. It is a sophisticated bio-neural matrix capable of processing quantum-dimensional calculations while maintaining stable hyperspace field generation. Right, your cosmic therapy brain with a PhD in theoretical physics. Zara had stopped correcting Jake's deliberately irreverent descriptions of her ship's capabilities, though her ears still twitched whenever he anthropomorphized the vessel. Jake suspected she was beginning to find his human tendency toward casual irreverence more amusing than alarming, which he considered progress in interspecies relations. Their work partnership had developed into an efficient system over the past week. Jake would locate and extract the required materials using his salvage expertise, while Zara provided technical analysis and occasionally deployed her ship's more exotic capabilities when conventional tools proved inadequate. The arrangement worked well, except for Zara's tendency to offer helpful suggestions about human engineering techniques. If you adjusted the fulcrum point by 7 centimeters and increased the leverage ratio, your extraction efficiency would improve substantially, she observed as Jake struggled with a particularly stubborn piece of industrial equipment. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, Jake grunted, applying what Zara had termed percussive maintenance to a corroded access panel. Your approach lacks precision and repeatability, but it's emotionally satisfying. Jake gave the panel another emphatic bang with his improvised hammer, and it popped open with a satisfying click. See, technology responds to confidence. Technology responds to applied force, exceeding structural tolerance thresholds. Same thing, different words. Zara made a notation in what appeared to be a holographic tablet that materialized in her palm. I am beginning to understand why human engineering solutions are simultaneously inefficient and surprisingly effective. We're full of contradictions. It's part of our charm. Charm is not typically considered a relevant parameter in technological assessment. Maybe it should be. Life's more interesting when things don't make perfect sense. They worked in companionable silence for several minutes, Jake extracting components while Zara scanned them for useful materials. The routine was interrupted by the distant sound of engines approaching from the east, a mechanical growling that made Jake freeze mid-extraction. "That's not good," he muttered, recognizing the distinctive rumble of Tommy Morrison's modified salvage truck. "Is this sound significant?" Zara asked, her ears pivoting toward the approaching noise with animal alertness. "Very significant, and not in a good way. We need to get back to your ship now." "Why are these other humans hostile?" Tommy Morrison isn't exactly hostile, but he's got a flexible relationship with the concept of other people's property. If he sees your ship, he'll try to claim salvage rights. Salvage rights, the legal principle that abandoned property belongs to whoever finds it first. Except Tommy's definition of abandoned is pretty generous. Jake began hastily packing their gathered materials while Zara processed this information. "Your species has customs regarding the appropriation of technology. We have customs regarding the appropriation of everything. Humans are very creative when it comes to justifying why other people's stuff should belong to them instead. This seems inefficient from a resource allocation perspective. Welcome to humanity. We specialize in inefficient resource allocation." The engine noise was getting closer, accompanied by the sound of multiple vehicles. Jake cursed under his breath as he recognized the familiar pattern. Morrison never traveled alone when he expected to find something valuable. "How many humans are approaching?" Zara asked, her luminescent skin dimming slightly in what Jake was learning to recognize as concern. "Too many. Tommy runs with a crew of about 6 or 7 other scavengers, all of whom share his flexible ethical standards." "Are they dangerous?" "They're not exactly violent, but they're persistent. And they have a tendency to shoot first and ask questions later when they think someone's holding out on them." Zara's expression grew thoughtful. "Perhaps I should relocate my ship to avoid detection." "Can you do that?" "I thought your cosmic therapy brain was still recovering from its concussion." "My companion maintains sufficient cognitive function for basic maneuvering, though extended flight would be inadvisable." "How extended is extended?" "Anything beyond local atmospheric repositioning could cause permanent neural damage." Jake weighed their options as the engine sounds grew louder. Morrison's crew would be on them within minutes, and there was no way to hide the evidence of their salvage operation. Their best bet was to get back to Zara's ship and hope it could relocate itself before the scavengers investigated the crater. "Can your ship make itself invisible or something?" "Optical camouflage is a standard feature, yes, though the energy expenditure required for full-spectrum concealment would impede the healing process." "How much would it impede it?" "Approximately 3 to 4 days of additional recovery time per hour of active camouflage." Jake did the math and didn't like the results. That's a steep price for avoiding Tommy Morrison. These other humans pose a significant threat to our continued cooperation. If they find your ship, they'll try to strip it for parts. Even if they can't figure out how your technology works, they'll keep trying until they break something important. This would be problematic. Very problematic. Plus, I'd have to explain how I've been having tea parties with an alien for the past week, which would raise some uncomfortable questions about my mental state. Zara's ears twitched in what Jake now recognized as her version of amusement. Tea parties. Social gatherings involving hot beverages and conversation. It's a human cultural practice. We have been consuming nutritional supplements while exchanging information. This constitutes a tea party. Close enough. The sound of engines had reached the point where Jake could distinguish individual vehicles. 3 trucks, maybe 4, all running rough but functional. Morrison's usual convoy when he was expecting to find something worth the fuel expenditure. Tommy Morrison's truck wheezed to a stop 50 meters away, its engine coughing like a chain smoker with pneumonia. Jake watched through his peripheral vision as Morrison's crew deployed from their vehicles with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done this dance many times before. 6 men, all armed, all looking like they'd been chewed up by the Wasteland and spit back out with fewer teeth and more scars. Well, Jake Holloway, Morrison called out, his voice carrying the distinctive nasal quality that came from having his nose broken too many times. Fancy meeting you in my territory. Your territory, Jake replied, keeping his voice level while Zara remained hunched over a salvage crate with her cap pulled low. Last I checked, Cedar Falls was still in the public domain. But public domain don't mean much when there ain't no public left to enforce it. Morrison approached with the swagger of someone who'd never met a property line he couldn't cross. Besides, I got salvage claims filed on everything within 20 clicks of here. Filed with who exactly? The Wasteland Bureau of made-up paperwork. Filed with Colt and Winchester, Morrison said, patting the pistol holstered at his hip. They're real good at settling property disputes. Zara shifted slightly, and Jake caught the faint shimmer that meant she was preparing to do something that would probably solve their immediate problem while creating several larger ones. He stepped casually between her and Morrison's line of sight. Easy there, Tommy. No need to get philosophical about real estate law. There's plenty of salvage to go around. Maybe. But word is you've been pulling some real interesting stuff out of this area lately. High-grade electronics, rare earth materials, stuff that shouldn't exist anymore. Morrison's eyes narrowed. Makes a man wonder if you found yourself a mother lode somewhere. You know how rumors get started in the Wasteland. Someone finds a working radio, and by the time the story gets passed around, it's become an entire electronics factory. The funny thing about rumors, Jake, sometimes they turn out to be true. Morrison gestured to one of his men who began circling toward the crater. Mind if we take a look around? Professional curiosity and all. Jake's mind raced through their options. Morrison's crew was spreading out in a pattern that would make retreat impossible, and Zara's ship was sitting in the crater like a smoking gun made of liquid starlight. In about 30 seconds, this was going to become the kind of situation that got resolved with violence or alien intervention, neither of which appealed to him. That was when Zara stood up and removed her cap. I believe this human is attempting to claim ownership of our research site, she said to Jake, her pointed ears clearly visible in the afternoon sunlight. Should I initiate defensive protocols? Morrison's jaw dropped so fast Jake worried it might dislocate. The other scavengers froze in place, their weapons halfway drawn, staring at Zara like she was a hallucination that had wandered off from someone else's fevered dream. Jake, Morrison said slowly, his voice climbing several octaves, please tell me that's not what I think it is. Okay, it's not what you think it is. That's an alien. You said not to tell you what you think it is. That's a goddamn alien, Jake. Her name is Zara, and she's actually quite pleasant once you get past the whole from another planet thing. Morrison's crew was exhibiting various stages of shock, ranging from slack-jawed disbelief to nervous weapon checking. One of them, a scraggly kid named Pete, was making what appeared to be religious gestures in Zara's direction. This is impossible, Morrison stammered. Aliens don't exist. They're just stories, science fiction nonsense. I assure you that my existence is quite thoroughly documented, Zara replied with scientific precision. Though I understand your skepticism, cognitive dissonance is a common response to paradigm-shifting information. She talks like a college professor, Pete whispered loudly. I have advanced degrees in several fields, though I suspect your educational institutions would not recognize the accrediting bodies involved. Jake decided to take control of the situation before it spiraled completely out of hand. Look, Tommy, I know this is a lot to process, but here's the deal. Zara's ship crashed during the solar storm, and I've been helping her fix it. In exchange, she's been sharing some interesting technological insights. Technological insights, Morrison repeated, his entrepreneurial instincts beginning to overcome his shock. What kind of technological insights? The kind that could revolutionize how we approach post-storm reconstruction, Jake said carefully. But only if we handle this situation with some degree of intelligence and discretion. Morrison's eyes lit up with the unmistakable gleam of someone calculating potential profit margins. You're talking about alien technology, real alien technology. I'm talking about partnership opportunities that could benefit everyone involved. Assuming everyone involved can act like civilized human beings instead of greedy wasteland pirates. Hey, now that's unnecessarily harsh. We prefer independent contractors with flexible ethical guidelines. Zara tilted her head with interest. Your species has numerous euphemisms for morally questionable behavior patterns. It's one of our specialties, Jake replied. We're very creative when it comes to justifying poor life choices. This is fascinating from an anthropological perspective. Morrison stepped closer, his fear giving way to curiosity and avarice. So you really are from outer space? I am from a planetary system, approximately 47 light-years from your solar system, yes. And you've got a spaceship. I have a bio-neural exploration vessel, currently undergoing neural pathway reconstruction, following traumatic electromagnetic exposure. Morrison blinked. Come again. She has a spaceship with a concussion, Jake translated. We've been nursing it back to health. Can I see it? Zara looked to Jake, who shrugged. The cat was thoroughly out of the bag at this point, and trying to stuff it back in would only make things worse. I suppose there's no harm in showing you, Zara said, though I should warn you that my companion is still somewhat sensitive to external stimuli during the healing process. They walked toward the crater in a procession that felt like something between a diplomatic mission and a field trip to the world's most dangerous zoo. Morrison's crew followed at a respectful distance, whispering among themselves and occasionally pointing at Zara's ears. The ship revealed itself as they crested the crater's edge, its bioluminescent hull pulsing gently in the afternoon light. Morrison's reaction was everything Jake had expected and more. Sweet mother of pearl, Morrison breathed. That's the most beautiful thing I've seen since before the storm. Thank you, Zara said. I will convey your compliments to my companion. It's alive. Sentient might be more accurate. Think of it as a very large, very intelligent organism that happens to excel at interstellar navigation. Morrison walked closer to the ship, his entrepreneurial instincts warring with a healthy sense of self-preservation. What's it worth? Worth? Zara looked puzzled. Market value. What could someone sell this for? The concept of monetary value does not apply to sentient beings in our society. That would be tantamount to slavery. But hypothetically... Tommy, Jake interrupted, recognizing the look in Morrison's eyes. This isn't some piece of salvage you can strip for parts. It's a living creature and it belongs to Zara. I'm just thinking practically here, Jake. Something like this could change everything. Hell, it could change the entire world. That, said a new voice from the ship's entrance, is precisely what we hope to avoid. Everyone turned to see a second figure emerging from the craft, this one clearly male, and wearing what appeared to be an official uniform covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. His ears were even more pronounced than Zara's, and his expression suggested someone who just discovered his worst fears confirmed. "Commander Thex," Zara said, her luminescent skin paling visibly. "I was not expecting your arrival." "Obviously not, given the spectacular nature of your protocol violations." Thex surveyed the assembled humans with the expression of someone examining particularly unpleasant insects. "Agent Zara of the Kepler expedition, you are hereby relieved of duty pending a full investigation of unauthorized cultural contamination." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. Cultural contamination. The introduction of advanced concepts or technologies to pre-spaceflight civilizations, Thex explained without taking his eyes off Zara. "A serious breach of Andorian coalition policy, punishable by exile and neural adjustment." Neural adjustment. Jake didn't like the sound of that. "Memory modification to prevent future violations," Zara said quietly. "Effectively, personality death." The crater fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's biological systems. Jake realized that their partnership, their friendship, everything they'd built together over the past weeks was about to be wiped away by bureaucratic protocol. "Now hold on just a minute," Morrison said, stepping forward with the confidence of someone who'd never met an authority figure he couldn't eventually bribe or intimidate. "Nobody's adjusting anybody's neural anything on my watch." Thex regarded Morrison with mild interest. "And you are?" "Tommy Morrison, independent contractor and duly elected representative of the Cedar Falls Regional Salvage Cooperative." Jake stared at Morrison. "There is no Cedar Falls Regional Salvage Cooperative." "There is now. I just founded it and elected myself president. Motion carries unanimously." "Tommy, what are you doing?" "I'm doing what humans do best, Jake. I'm making things up as I go along and seeing what sticks." Morrison turned back to Thex. "Now, as the official representative of the local government, I'm formally requesting diplomatic relations with your coalition thing." Diplomatic relations. Thex looked like someone had just offered to sell him a bridge. "Your civilization lacks the technological sophistication for meaningful interstellar diplomacy." "Maybe, but we've got something you folks seem to need." "Which is?" Morrison grinned, and Jake recognized the expression that meant someone was about to be sold, something they didn't know they wanted. "We've got the one thing your fancy protocols can't account for. We've got Zara's friend here." "I fail to understand your meaning." "Simple. Your agent has been working with Jake for weeks now, sharing information, learning about our culture, probably filing reports that are way more detailed than anything your regular observation protocols could provide. She's become what we call a subject matter expert." Jake began to see where Morrison was going with this. A cultural liaison. Exactly. Instead of punishing her for accidentally becoming the first successful human-alien diplomatic contact in history, you should be promoting her. Thex's expression suggested he was reconsidering several fundamental assumptions about human intelligence. "You believe Agent Zara's protocol violations constitute successful diplomacy?" "Look around," Morrison said, gesturing at the mixed group of humans and aliens standing peacefully together in a radioactive crater. "When's the last time first contact went this well in any of your science fiction movies?" "We do not base policy decisions on fictional entertainment." "Maybe you should start. Your agent here has managed to establish friendly relations with a representative sample of post-storm human survivors without a single incident of violence, cultural misunderstanding, or religious hysteria. That's got to be some kind of record." Zara stepped forward, her posture straightening as she addressed her superior. "Commander, I request permission to establish a formal cultural exchange program with the human survivors. My extended observation has revealed that their adaptability and resourcefulness make them potentially valuable partners, rather than subjects requiring protection." "Partners?" The human capacity for improvisation and creative problem-solving could provide unique perspectives on challenges facing coalition member civilizations. Their approach to technology, while primitive, demonstrates remarkable efficiency and innovation within resource constraints. Jake felt a surge of pride at being described as remarkably efficient, even if it came with qualifiers about primitive technology. Furthermore, Zara continued, the electromagnetic resilience demonstrated by some human technologies could prove